so we're super, super grateful for Jason Fuchs, who's going to be our presenter today, to have also, yes, a nice little clap for him, but
appreciate that.
super excited for him to be able to share his knowledge and be able to basically go through a whole presentation that touches on all these subjects. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, this will be a really interactive kind of like teaching type of style for presenting. So
Right.
if at any point anyone has questions, they can feel free to ask, as well as Jason might call on some of you guys. So really, really encourage that everyone's first active listening, being respectful to the speaker, and also being as interactive as possible. I think that will add to the value of the conversation in total. So with that, I'll pass it on to Jason for him to give us this great presentation. Thanks, Jason.
Oh, thank you so much. So a special thank you to Kim, Sergio, Keegan, and Alejandra. Really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to present to these folks. Thank you to Johnson & Johnson. I mean, this program is absolutely fantastic. I participated in the high school program, the internship program. Love what everybody's doing. And a very special thank you to all of you attending today. You could be doing anything right now. You could be anywhere, but you chose to log in and listen to me. So thank you very much. I appreciate all of you. So let's get the name out of the way. It's Jason Fuchs. It's spelled F-U-C-H-S. I know what some of you are thinking. No worries. I get it all the time. I am Managing Director of SagePath Financial Advisors. We manage the financial affairs for a group of families and business owners all over the US, mainly in Florida because that's where I live. Go figure. And we're here to help you grow your financial future the right way. Now, I want to get something out of the way. This is what I call a dot. I am much better in person when I do these seminars. I love the energy of the room. I love interacting with the guests. But right now, I am staring at a green dot, which you see right here. So I've tried to liven it up a little bit by putting a little crowd behind it. So if you see me looking away, it's not because I'm multitasking or because I'm bored. It's because I have to stare at a green dot for 45 minutes, and it is incredibly awkward. But it is what it is. COVID is here, so we're going to get through this together. This is what we're going to cover today, and we're going to try to keep it as interactive as possible. Questions are welcome along the way. You might hear me kind of shy away some of those questions because a lot of times I will actually answer your question throughout the presentation. But I'm going to call out to you. So if I ask you a question, don't raise your hand or wait to be called on. Just shout out the answer. There are no correct answers either. This is a very open and interaction that I'm looking for. So I want to start with why. A lot of people start with what they do. I want to tell you why I do what I do and why I love it so much. And then I'm going to take you back to the beginning because I think it's important for you to understand where I came from and how I got to where I am today. And then I'm going to tell you what makes me happy. It's awkward, but it'll make sense down the road. Then we're going to get into the financial stuff. So we're going to talk about setting goals. We're going to talk about how to read your paycheck, budgeting. We're going to talk about emergency fund, how much, where to keep it. I'm going to tell you about credit, what it is, how to be responsible with it. And then we're going to get into investing. And then I want to share with you my role in all this process and how I work with my clients. Okay? So why do I love what I do? Well, I think for many people, their family, their faith, and their health are the most important things in their lives. Every day, the work I do influences those things for my clients who are also my friends. I've been to birthday parties. I've been to weddings. I've been to graduation parties, bar mitzvahs, baptisms, christenings, retirement parties. But I've also been to funerals. I've comforted grieving families. I've helped individuals struggling to find a new job or maybe dealing with divorce. All of those things, the good and the bad, are reasons why I love doing this. I can make the complicated things clearer, easy to understand. I know the right questions to ask and how to listen for the answers. I think people need someone to put their best interests first. And for many people, I'm that someone. And I hear it all the time, Jason, it's just about the money, but it's not. For me, it's about friendship, integrity, and trust. I help people live the life they want in some special situations, the life they thought they couldn't have. And that is why I love what I do. So I want to take you back to the beginning. This is me growing up. Now, obviously, this isn't me. I downloaded these pictures. But to get you an idea of what I was like as a kid, when I was 8 years old, all I wanted to be was a financial advisor. You know, other kids on Halloween were dressing up as superheroes or, I don't know, monsters. I was dressing up as a financial advisor. I had my dad's suit. I had my grandfather's top hat in his briefcase. Briefcase was probably full of cookies and candy. But all I wanted to be was a financial advisor. And I think it had something to do with the fact that in my mind, I had built up this idea that financial advisors had money. I mean, they were managing money, so they must have it. When I was growing up, about 8 years old, my mom left us. No reason, just one day, got up and she was gone. So this is where my sister and I lived with my father. And it wasn't the greatest neighborhood, wasn't the worst neighborhood. And no, it's not the house in the middle. It's the house over here to the right. Funny story, well, I guess not so funny, but we were around when this fire started, grease fire. I remember my dad had the hose. He was trying to help our neighbors before the firemen came, whatever. Different story for another day. But my point is, we didn't live in the greatest neighborhood. It wasn't the nicest looking house, but we had a house. My clothes, I had clothes that they didn't really fit. You know, most of my pants were 6 inches above my ankles. My shirts were probably 3, maybe 4 sizes too big. So a lot of hand-me-downs. Didn't have a lot of toys, so we spent a lot of time outside. We had food, but I remember being hungry a lot. But my dad was doing the best he could. And I didn't appreciate it then, but I appreciate it now. We had food, I had clothes, we had a house, I had a bed. So life wasn't too terrible. You know, fast forward, a couple years, my mom came back in the picture. My parents ended up going broke. We actually lost this house. The bank took it back. We ended up moving into an apartment, real teeny tiny, 2-bedroom apartment with my dad. So life was okay. Fast forward even more, my dad remarried a woman who was not the nicest person. So in order to distract myself from all of this stuff going on, I decided to jump into school as much as I could. Middle school, high school, I was always doing some sort of math. And I thought that every math problem had a solution, unlike what was going on behind the scenes in my personal life, and which is why I love math. So I was getting straight A's. I was doing really well in school, but I was working really hard. To get out of the house, I got a job. I was 13 or 14 when I got my first job. It was a Subway. I ended up becoming night manager a few months into the job because I was working so hard. I had a key, a code to the store. It was pretty wild. I was working 60 hours a week, and I realized that in order to really get out of the house and make something of myself, I had to go to college. I mean, that's what everybody was telling me. So what I did is I saved every penny I could. I was making maybe $6.50 an hour, which back then was quite a lot of money for a kid my age. I was saving everything I could. I ended up joining, 4 or 5 clubs at school because my goal was I had to get straight A's and set myself apart from the rest of the folks in high school so I could get a scholarship, so I could get into college, get some sort of grant because my parents were going to pay for it. So it worked. I ended up getting accepted to Virginia Tech early decision. I got a couple scholarships, a couple grants. I ended up taking out some loans to pay for college. And I started in the College of Engineering. I was studying aerospace engineering with a minor in computer science. I was really good with numbers. I loved computers, but I was kind of lost. My first 2 years was rough. It was hard adjusting because I didn't really know what I wanted to do or what I wanted to be. And I remembered back in high school having to set myself apart to, get these scholarships and grants and get into college. So I started doing the same thing at Tech. I joined a few clubs. One of the clubs I joined was the skydiving club. We used to jump out of Cessnas, 1,500, 1,800 feet, nothing crazy. 10 of us packed in like sardines in this plane. It was a ton of fun. Then I realized I had to get a little bit serious. So I joined the investment club, and that was really cool. That's where my interest in the world of investing and financial management really started. There were about 20 of us and a professor, and we managed about $1.5, $2 million. And the professor kind of taught us how to find companies and funds that we wanted to invest in. So it was up to us to pick the companies and the funds. We put together a presentation, shared it with the professor, and if he liked what he saw, he would actually place the trades. So it was really neat because indirectly, 20 of us were in charge of about $1.52 million. And that's when I decided I found myself. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to get involved in business. So I got out of engineering, I got out of computer science, and I started business. It set me back a year, but I'm really happy I did it because I don't think I would have been happy as an engineer or, in the field of computer science. So it was really neat. I joined a couple more clubs because the idea was after college, I had to get a job, right? That's the point of college. So I was working really hard in school. I was maintaining a B average at the time, and I was not the smartest guy in the room. I stayed after a lot because I had a hard time understanding concepts that were coming easy to other people. So I was studying a lot, working really hard. I had a job. I was working 40 hours a week because I was paying my rent. I was paying for gas, groceries, car insurance, health insurance. So I was in there. I was on my own. And what happened was my senior year, a company reached out to me just before I graduated. So I graduated, and my first job out of college was not investing. I ended up getting into sales, and of all things, I sold liquor. Go figure. So for about 6 months, I was selling many products in Richmond, bars, restaurants, clubs, and I was working really hard. One of the suppliers ended up seeing all of this growth I had in my territory, said, "Hey, Jason, how'd you like to come work for us?" I said, "No brainer, okay." So I ended up going from Richmond, Virginia to managing North Carolina and Virginia, 2 states. So a lot of product going into and out of states. It was awesome. It was fun. Early mornings, late nights. I did that for about a year, and I was getting really burnt out. I was making a ton of money, but I was spending it just as fast as I was making it. My owner of the company, decided he wanted to retire. He sold everything to another company. My territory went to Alabama, Mississippi, and North Carolina. I had a manager I couldn't stand. And I remember talking to my friend Mike and saying, "Hey man, I hate this. I'm so unhappy. I need to get out of this." He said, "Come to Charlotte." I was living in Raleigh, North Carolina at the time. He said, "Come to Charlotte. I got this great job with Wachovia at the bank. I'm doing financial advising. I'll get you an interview. Just come stay with me until you find the job." I did it. I sold everything. I had my car, I had my dog and clothes. I went to Charlotte, lived with him for a couple weeks, found another apartment with another guy I knew, and I couldn't get the job. This job he promised me, I couldn't get it. So for the next 2 months, I sent emails to Wachovia. I called Wachovia. I went around to all the branches in Wachovia, trying to get my name out there, trying to get my resume out there. And it worked. Finally got the call. They offered me the job. They trained me. And then 2008 hit. Does anybody remember what happened in 2008? The market just tanked. Recession. And at that point, Wachovia, if anybody remembers, was insolvent. They had no money. Wells Fargo ended up buying Wachovia and then told all of us new people, "Sit tight. We don't know if you're going to have a job, but we're still going to pay you." So for the next 2 weeks, I got a paycheck, but I had no idea if I was going to have a job. Well, it all worked out. Wells Fargo offered me a position in the private bank. I wrote a lot of loans. I did a lot of checking accounts, all this work, and I was still not in the world of investing. I hated it. I was investing on my own, but all I wanted to do was be a financial advisor. So I said, forget this, I'm done. I left the bank and went to what's called Private Client Group, and that is a part of Wells Fargo. Simply put, Private Client Group, you build your own practice behind the Wells Fargo name. So I went from having no clients. All I had was a computer, a phone, and an agenda. And that first year, I went from no assets to $10 million. By the end of year 2, start of year 3, I had $20 million under assets under management. And it was either the beginning of year 5 or the end of year 5, I went to $40 million under management. So I started doing really well. But the problem was 2 years ago, if anybody knows the name Wells Fargo, and if anybody's followed the news, that stuff you see or that stuff you've read holds some truth to it. There was a major disconnect in the culture of the company. There was no diversity. It was not about helping our clients. It was about making money and increasing the price of our share. So I left and I decided I'm going to start my own firm. And I'm really happy I did. That's where SagePath came into play. The majority of my clients came with me, and I feel incredibly blessed that everybody followed me. So now I manage about $50 million in assets, and I run a pretty successful practice. You know, what's funny is up until this point, when I was a kid, I thought money was going to make me happy. I'm doing well now. We have a lot of nice things. I'll never go hungry. My family will never go hungry. My daughter will never go hungry again. You know, all of this time I thought money was going to make me happy, but that's not what makes me happy. It's a balance of these things you see here. Does anybody know the name Zig Ziglar? Zig Ziglar was an old school salesman. I believe he started years and years ago selling encyclopedias door to door. But he wrote a lot of books. He gave a lot of coaching seminars on how to, you know, get involved in the world of sales. He was very humble, very charismatic. He loved his community. He loved all people. Really neat guy. So I borrowed this from him, and it's called The Wheel of Life. These are the things that make me happy. They create balance in my life. I told you about my career. I told you about my financial situation, spiritual. Look, I'm not going to stand up here and preach to you, but I believe in God. I'm a Christian. I go to church every Sunday, and throughout the week, I'm actively involved in the church community as well. Physically, I love going to the gym and lifting weights. I run, I surf, I hike, I mountain bike. Love staying physically fit. As you can see, I drum too. So I love staying busy and being physically fit. Intellectually, I am the first to admit when I don't know the answer to something. I am not an expert in everything. So I actively try to learn and try to grow intellectually. From a family standpoint, you know, family is number one in my book. My wife, Amber, and I will be married 4 years, July. She is incredible. I'd be absolutely lost without her. We have an 18-month-old daughter. Her name is Jewel. We actually adopted Jewel, and she is just magic. Before COVID started, we were in the process of a second adoption, which didn't work out. My wife was laid off, and with the health scare, we weren't able to pursue that adoption. So we're hoping that later this year, once things kind of get back to normal, whatever normal is now, we'll be able to pursue that adoption. From a social standpoint, I'm not the most popular guy in the area. I do have friends, and it's important for me to get out and socialize with those friends. Maybe not as much right now, given our situation. I've been on a lot of Zoom meetings, and I think it's important that I maintain those connections. So now we're going to get into the bulk of everything, okay? And now what I want to cover is I want to tell you about how to set your goals. You know, one of the first steps in financial planning is setting your goals. When you set your goals, what you're doing is you're defining your dreams for the future. Some of your goals might be things you want to do in the not so distant future, like paying off your credit card or debt. I know many of you will have student loans that you're going to want to pay off. Maybe you want to buy a car. Maybe you want to lease a car. Maybe you want to buy a new home, or maybe you want to build your own home. Maybe you want to rent a home. Maybe you want to finance your education, pay off some of those debt. You know, eventually you're going to have families, and eventually you're going to want to plan for college education. And then maybe you want to retire early. And look, I get that not everybody is golfing when they retire. I don't even like golf. I just thought it was a cool icon. So your goals are the foundation of your financial plan, because you need to know what you want to accomplish before you start saving or investing any of your money. When you've identified and prioritized your financial goals, you can develop a clear-cut savings or investment strategy that can really help turn your dreams into reality. Now, this is an acronym I'm sure some of you are familiar with. Anybody know what the SMART acronym stands for? Yell it out. What does the S stand for?
Oh God, I know M is measurable.
You got the M.
Specific. Yeah, specific. That's what it is.
All right. So specific. Let's cover that. You need to clearly define your goal. You need to describe it. And that's all about what do you want to accomplish. So for example, if you say that I want to save for my college education, that's great. But is that really specific? Maybe a better goal, a more specific goal would be, I want to save for 4 years of college education and 2 years of graduate studies to Virginia Tech. Sorry, I'm biased. That's where I went to school. Now, measurable, anybody know what measurable is?
Yeah, you have a number to match with it, right?
Exactly. One goal I hear all the time is, I want to retire. Okay, that's great. Is that really measurable though? I think a better goal that's measurable would be, I want to retire by the time I'm 60. What about attainable?
Realistic.
Beautiful, beautiful. Goals can be challenging, but what you need to do, you need to have a fair chance of actually achieving them. Here's another one I hear. I want to save $1 million in 5 years. Okay, is that really attainable? Maybe a better goal, more attainable, would be, I want to save $1 million over 30 years. Probably more attainable. What about relevant?
Based on the needs you have?
Yeah, it reflects your specific needs and your values. Goals that are relevant to you, you'll be more excited about, and being more excited about them will actually help you achieve those goals. So if I say, for example, I want to save for $25,000 for a down payment on a new home, that's probably relevant. Or maybe instead of a new home, something more relevant to you all would be maybe down payment on a car. Who knows? What about timely? The answer is in the word. You have to have a time frame or a deadline for reaching your goal. If you say, I want to pay off my credit card debt by the end of the year, or I want to pay off my student loans in 5 years, that's timely, right? All right, so any questions here? So it's important not just to set goals, but actually write down your goals and put them somewhere where you can see. Every year I do my business planning and I have the goals that I've laid out for 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, 10 year. And I always put them somewhere that I'm going to see them. So once every couple weeks, every month, I'm reviewing those goals just to make sure that they're relevant to me. Now, some of you might be looking at your paycheck or your checking account and thinking, that's interesting. I'm supposed to be making X amount of money, but only Y amount is being deposited in my account. What's the difference? Why is the amount I'm receiving so less than what I was told I would receive? Anyone out there have that experience? Yeah. Yeah. So there are a few things that you want to pay attention to when you're looking at your pay stub. Gross pay is the total money you've earned per pay period before taxes and any other deductions are taken out. It can be hourly salary, it can be full-time salary, and maybe some of you have overtime. All of that is included in the gross pay. So then what happens if you have taxes? Now the federal government always wants its share. So from a federal standpoint, a percentage of your income goes to those taxes. Now, if you're in a state that requires you to pay income taxes, that state is going to pull a percentage of your paycheck out as well. I live in the great state of Florida, so it does not require any income taxes. And I'm sure many of you in Florida as well are familiar with that. And then there's something called FICA. Anybody know what FICA is? FICA stands for Federal Insurance Contribution Act. And this is a law that basically says every person who works has to contribute to Social Security and Medicare funds. Doesn't matter how old you are. Then you have other deductions. You have health insurance. There's something called an HSA, which is a health savings account. You take a portion of your paycheck, put it into a savings account that's strictly for medical expenses. And then you have retirement plans. So 403Bs, 457s, 401Ks, those deductions are taken out as well. So then you end up with your net pay. And this is just the amount you're left over after taxes and all of your other deductions. So it's important when you are looking for a job that you consider these items right here. So for example, company A might pay you more hourly or annually as far as the salary is concerned, might pay you more than Johnson & Johnson, but maybe J&J is actually giving you health insurance that's better. Maybe they're giving you a retirement plan and they're matching that retirement plan, which means essentially they're giving you free money for retirement. So from what I understand from the clients I work with at J&J, they have great health benefits, vision, dental, and the retirement benefits in the 401k are great. In the sense you have a lot of neat investments you can pick from, and J&J will match a percentage of that depending on, you know, where you are in the company. And J&J will also reimburse you is it up to $10,000 for postgraduate studies as long as you're working with the company? Yeah.
Irrelevant.
So, yeah. Okay. So yeah, company A might pay you more, that your salary might be more, but J&J might actually provide more value through the insurance it provides, through the 401k matching, and through the college education reimbursement. Okay, make sense? Anyone have any questions? Man, y'all are geniuses. I don't know why I'm here. So this is where the creating a financial plan really starts. The first part of creating a financial plan involves you have to control your flow of money. You have to understand what's coming in and what's going out. Now, budget, that's what it does. It tracks your income, it tracks your expenses, and it helps you direct the flow and where you want that money to go. Has anybody out there created a budget, or is anyone out there tracking what they spend? Yeah, budgeting nowadays is so much easier than it used to be. You know, it used to be all about paper and pen and a ledger, but now there are so many neat apps out there that can be used. Anyone using any neat apps for their iPhone or Android phone? No? You know, Mint is a really good one, M-I-N-T. That's one that I've used. It's real neat. You can plug in all your accounts and it actually will track the spending. You can categorize everything. You can create budgets. You can create spreadsheets, and it's totally free. So what you have to do when constructing a budget is you first account for all of your income. So this is easy. You know, we went over the paycheck. Look at what you're receiving every couple of weeks, every month, however you get paid. Then what if you have property that you've invested in? Maybe you've got some rental income. Government benefits would be things like Social Security, for example. And then maybe you have interest from savings accounts, or maybe you have income from your investments. So what we're doing is we're trying to figure out everything that's coming in. And then what we do is we try to figure out what's going out. So expenses can be broken down in two categories. Now, fixed expenses are those you pretty much have to pay, like your rent, your mortgage, car payments, insurance, gas, groceries, maybe basic clothing. Discretionary expenses are the other stuff, the optional items like eating out, entertainment, going on vacations when you're not stuck in the house during COVID. You know, these are the fun stuff that you want to do. So it can be really difficult to get a handle on these numbers, and it's especially on the expense items. You might want to keep track of it for a while. I think paper and pen is usually the best option. But what you want to do is pay attention to what you're spending your money on. And it's not something that you'll instantly uncover. It might take a few months. It might take a few years to kind of figure out what you're spending money on. Some items are hard to keep track of. Like, for example, if you have gift expenses or heating costs or air conditioning costs, if you have car expenses, or if you get a cavity refilled, there are a lot of things that might be thrown at you. But the idea is try and track your expenses as much as you can. So now what you do is you're left over with a number. And hopefully that number, if you're looking at it on a monthly basis, annual basis, hopefully there's money left over. That's the goal of the budget, is to create a surplus. This is the money you want to save. This is the money you want to invest. But if you have a negative number, you'll have what's called a deficit. And that's bad. You're in the red. You're running a deficit. You're spending more than you're making. And the only thing that's going to change this equation is you either increase your income, work more, get a second job, or you decrease your expenses. And it's usually decreasing the discretionary expenses like the vacations, the clothing, the fun stuff. Usually decreasing that amount will be easier than anything else. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the bright side. We're going to assume that for the rest of this presentation, you're running a surplus. And the first thing you want to think about when you have money left over is taking some of that money and contributing to an emergency fund. Now, does anybody out there have an emergency fund set up? Everybody should be shaking their head or nodding their head yes. This is money that's readily available to meet unexpected expenses. And this is really the foundation of the financial plan. Without money to fall back on, unexpected expenses crop up. You might be forced to tap into savings that you've earmarked for college, retirement, or the new house or the new car, and that sets you back. But if you have an emergency fund, what it's going to do, it's going to help you easily handle a job loss, temporary disability, or an event that might prevent you from saving in the future or create some sort of pile of debt. Now, I'm curious, what kind of emergencies have you all dealt with? I'll start. We had the fence fall apart, completely unexpected. If you ask me, buying a fence is incredibly stupid because you just stare at it. It keeps the dogs in the yard, but you don't really get any joy out of it. So I'm curious, what kind of emergencies have you all run into?
Car problems.
I'm sorry?
Car problems.
Car problems? Yeah, that's a big one. So how much should you put into your emergency fund? A popular rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months. I say the longer side, the better, 6 months of your living expenses, especially right now with everything, being locked down. I know things are starting to open back up, but a lot of people have lost their jobs. And it's the people that had that 6 months of living expenses that are going to get through this much better. But the point is, the amount you save depends on several factors. Do you work in an industry where layoffs are common? Do you have stable income? Are you in a growing field? Do you have adequate health and disability insurance? Do you have other assets that you could tap into without using your emergency fund? Where you keep your emergency fund is also important. Don't put it in a jar on top of your refrigerator. Don't put it in your sock drawer under your mattress. Put it in a bank. You want to put it in an account that's readily available, and you might want to put it somewhere that you might get a higher return. So for example, a checking account or maybe a savings account might be better, because putting it in a checking account, you're not using this money actively. It's just sitting there. A money market or a savings account is going to get you more interest. But the idea is the balance of that emergency fund, it can be held in something that you can get a better return in, but can be accessible in a day or two. Any questions about the emergency fund? Okay. So now you've established the emergency fund, and to meet your normal expenses, you've created the budget, but sometimes you need more to cover your expenses than the income you're bringing in. Now, I'm curious, back in my day, when I was in college, the credit card companies would actually set up tables in front of classrooms. So when the students came out, they would offer you all kinds of swag, t-shirts, koozies, gift cards for food. I remember one day I walked away with 5 t-shirts and 2 gift cards to local restaurants. And then a month later, I got all of this mail saying I now had 7 credit cards. I had no idea what I was doing. I just wanted the free swag. Are college campuses still doing that?
I don't remember it at FSU, at least. I see Allie shaking her head yes.
Yeah.
It's the only reason I have a Wells Fargo account.
Anybody else have that issue? All right.
There's a lot of no's. I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love that. I love that. So you have to be careful. You know, credit card is money. It is not you can use a credit card and you may not pay that balance back in the next day, week, month or two, but you are responsible for paying that balance back. So be very, very careful with credit. It creates debt. And if you get yourself into a hole, it can be very hard to get yourself out of that hole. So this is a really neat example I like to use. This is what I call the $160,000 credit card. So on the left-hand side, you have credit card debt. Now this is huge. We never like to see this. $30,000 balance on a credit card. Let's say your interest is 18%. And in order to pay that off, you're paying about $541 a month. But in 10 years, guess what? You'll have paid off that $30,000. Well, in addition to that $30,000, you're paying interest. Remember, 18%. So over 10 years, you've actually paid almost $65,000. That's crazy. Who would want to do that? No one. So the idea is try to eliminate your credit card debt. Credit cards are there for an emergency, but don't get in the habit of using everyday spending on your credit card. Instead, invest that money. Now, if you looked at someone who had no credit card debt, but took that $541 and invested the money, maybe they were getting an 8% return. After 10 years, they'd have almost $100 grand. So the difference is that $165,000 number I mentioned. So be very responsible when it comes to credit. Now, credit cards can be dangerous, but other things like mortgages, financing a home, or student loans, those are things that you might have to utilize credit for, and that's okay. Just be responsible when it comes to credit. All right, so remember that in our example, after we subtracted expenses from the income, we actually had the surplus. There was money over. So what do you all think investing is? How would you define it? How would you describe it? There are no wrong answers.
Buying stocks.
Buying
Making
stocks?
money
Okay.
work for you. Getting something in return.
Okay. Good answer. Anything else?
Taking on risk in hopes of a return.
Very good. I like that. Risk, that's important.
Buying things that increase in value rather than decrease.
That's what we hope when we invest. It doesn't always work that way, but that is a great answer. Yes. So, speculating or investing is a little bit of both. It's a little bit of speculating and a little bit of saving. Investing involves you taking a certain amount of risk, and it also involves the desire to multiply your money over time. If you do it properly, investing is a carefully planned and prepared approach to managing your money with the goal of accumulating the funds you need. And planning your investment strategy is not about chasing the next best thing. It's about discipline. It's about patience. It is a marathon, not a sprint. So this is really neat. It shows the idea of compounding. Does anybody know what that fancy word compounding means? So one of the things that you have to look out for is called inflation. And inflation it has the general effect of reducing the value of your investments over time. Compounding is the exact opposite of that. Anyone who has a savings account understands the basics of compounding, right? The funds in your savings account, they earn interest, and that interest is added to the account balance. So the next time the interest is calculated, it's based on the increased value of the account. So in effect, you earn interest on your interest. And many people, however, they don't fully appreciate the impact that compounding earnings can have, especially over long periods of time. So let's say in this example, you invest $5,000 every year, okay? After 30 years, you would have invested how much? 5,000 times 30 is what?
150.
150,000, yeah.
All right.
We
Everybody
got there.
go with me. So 150,000. Yet, assuming your money grows at, I don't know, a 6% annual rate, because of compounding in 30 years, you can see that you're going to have a huge number, almost $400,000. Now, there's something really neat out there called the Rule of 72. And that's a quick way to help you estimate how long it'll take for an investment to double in value through compounding. So what you do is you divide the number 72 by the rate at which the investment will increase in value. So the result is the number of years it'll take the investment to double. For example, if the expected annual return on an investment is 3%, it should take about 24 years for your investment to double in value. You can also use the Rule of 72 to estimate the rate of interest you'd need to double your investment in a given number of years. All you do is divide 72 by the number of years. For example, in order for the investment to double in value in 4 years, you would need an annual return of 18%, which in my opinion is pretty high. Any questions on this?
That's cool.
Thank you. So this is an illustration of the importance of investing sooner or rather than later. When I went through creating a budget, you had that surplus. The idea is, yeah, you put the money in an emergency fund and then you don't go out and spend it. You don't go buy a nice car, nice clothes. You don't spend all the money. Take some of that money and start investing. It could be for retirement. It could be for any of the goals that you've laid out for yourself. The point is, the sooner you start investing, the more time your investments have for potential growth. If you wait too long, it can be difficult to play catch up. So for example, let's say that you're investing $3,000 at the end of the year, starting when you're 20 years old. You would have accumulated almost $680,000, assuming a 3% or 6% growth rate by the time you reached age 66. That's huge. $3,000 a year is not a lot of money, in my opinion. But if you waited until age 35, as you can see, you'd have about $254,000. And then if you waited till age 45 to start, you would have $120,000. So the point I'm trying to make is start sooner rather than later. It makes your life a lot easier when it comes to trying to grow your assets over the long term. And it's never too late to start. So don't be discouraged. I'm simply trying to share with you the importance of starting sooner rather than later. Any questions here? All right, so these are neat. Employee-sponsored plans. Now, J&J offers what type of employee-sponsored plan?
They have a few options.
Yeah.
They do pre-Roth, Roth, 401k.
Those are things I know.
Yeah, I know those three for sure.
Yeah, J&J's got some really good benefits. So in 401k, you could have heard the term 403b, Roth 401k, 457. They're all pretty much the same. They have a few differences. But first, you generally contribute a percentage of your salary using pre-tax funds, and that's important. So you don't have to pay current taxes on contributions. You don't pay taxes on any earnings until you withdraw the funds, and that's typically in retirement. So as we discussed, this can really enhance the growth potential of your investments by allowing each year's savings to build on previous years. Because remember, the money's not taxed until you retire. So if you make those pre-tax contributions, pre-tax means that you're not taxed on the money, so it goes in the account before you pay taxes. What's also neat, it can also lower your current income tax liability. And that enables you to contribute more each month. And then when your money gets into your checking account as a paycheck, you pay less taxes on it. So it's a pretty neat feature. Some employers, they offer what's called a match. And they do that based on a percentage of your salary, essentially. And that's really neat because those are extra funds that your employer is giving you. You know, if your employer matches 5% of your contributions, you know, that money is free. So it's important to make sure that you're contributing up to the match at least, because you want to try and get that free money from your employer. Now, you should also consider that the distributions from these retirement plans, they're taxed at ordinary income tax. So it grows in the account before you retire. And then when you retire, you take the money out, it's added to your ordinary income and you pay taxes on that income. Now, a caution here, do not try to access these funds before the age of 59 and a half. That is a magical rule that the IRS has put into play. If you pull money out of a retirement account, with the exception of a Roth, I'm not going to get into that right now. If you pull money out of a retirement account too early, that money gets added to your ordinary income tax or income, so you're taxed on that money, and you pay a 10% penalty fee for withdrawing the money. So the idea is you should never try to pull out of a retirement plan unless it's an absolute emergency. For example, right now the IRS has a lot of new rules given what's going on with COVID for individuals and families to access retirement money penalty free. But again, this is an absolute worst case scenario. And you shouldn't need to access this money before retirement because remember, everybody is creating an emergency fund, right? So that emergency fund should help carry you through any unexpected expenses that you might incur. Okay, any questions? Now, the individual retirement accounts, the IRAs, are pretty neat. So these are retirement accounts that you can set up outside of your 401k. And what's neat is you can have a 401k and you can have an IRA. So this is pretty wild. I took this from 2018, but you know the numbers haven't changed very much. 26% of households in the US owned at least one IRA. That's a traditional IRA. 18% own a Roth IRA. This is terrible in my opinion. I think everyone should have their 401k and then should either have a Roth or a traditional IRA account. Now, what's the difference between the two? I'm so glad you asked. A traditional IRA allows you to make contributions to an account. Remember, that money will grow tax-free. When you get to retirement, you pull the money out and you're taxed as ordinary income. What's also neat is for many people, when you contribute to an IRA, you can deduct that amount from your taxes, which means you either owe the IRS less in taxes or they pay you more as a tax refund. A Roth IRA is really neat. The IRS says, hey, you're getting this money from your paycheck, so you've already been taxed on it. We're going to allow you to put it into an account for retirement. We're going to allow that money to grow tax-free. But then guess what? When you get to retirement, you don't pay taxes on that money. So Roth IRAs, in my opinion, are a great way to invest. Once you get to a certain income level, if you make too much money, you can't contribute to a Roth. But my point is, try to take advantage of that if you can, because there's nothing out there in the world that you can invest in, simply put, that allows you to grow money free of taxes for retirement and then take that money out free of taxes when you retire. So any questions here?
Hey, Jason, this is Sydney. I have a question.
Yes, Sydney.
Going back to the previous slide as well, you're talking about that the age 59 and a half, like unspoken rule that should be known. And this might be a very life-specific question, but for people who look to retire early, is there an account that they're able to pull out of if they're invested in something else? Like, let's say I'm super lucky and I get to retire at 35. Is there, yeah, no, I mean, not bragging. No, that's just a dream of mine. But
That's incredible.
If somebody is to do that and they're not, and they have to wait to pull out of that, and I'm sorry, I already forgot the name of the account, but to pull out of that account, is there other accounts if they're invested in they can pull out of without the penalty?
Yeah, so simply put, if you retire before 59 and a half, is there an ability to access retirement money without incurring a penalty?
Yes.
All right, there is. So one option would be in the Roth, the IRS says anything you put in, you can access. There are some rules to that, so it's not as simple, but you can access that money for before 59 and a half. So I don't know if you have a Roth and you put in, let's just make it simple. You put in 10,000 and it's grown to 15,000. You can't touch the $5,000 growth without paying that 10% penalty tax, but you can touch the $10,000 that you've put in. So that would be a way to access money before retirement. And with someone planning to retire that early, hopefully you're dumping a lot of money into other investments outside of your 401k and your IRA. Because the problem, the caveat to these types of retirement plans is you have limitations on what you can put in. So the 401k, there are limitations to put what you can put in, what the employer can put in, and then the IRA is the same. There are limitations to what you can put into those accounts. So for people that are really aggressively saving, trying to retire early, what you would do is you would create a separate account. And that would be what we call a taxable account. It's just, think of it as a savings account that will allow you to invest in whatever you want to invest in. So for example, I have clients that do want to retire early, 50, 45, and what they're doing is they're maxing out their 401k, they're maxing out their family's IRAs, and what they're doing is they're putting money into their savings account. And in that savings account, I'm investing in things that I would invest in that IRA or the 401k. So the idea is they have this other account that's going to be growing over the long term. And I'm trying to pick tax-friendly investments that will help potentially grow that money. So when they do retire before 59 and a half, they have the ability to access that money. And then guess what? When they turn 59 and a half, they start pulling the money out of retirement, less out of that savings account that I mentioned. And then when they reach certain ages, maybe they'll have Social Security income. So it's all about kind of creating a plan for the flow of income. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure. So this is what I try to help people do. I want to sit down with everyone and I want to help you uncover your goals, your short-term, your long-term goals. I talk about your investment experience. I talk about what you're comfortable with. Do you understand what risk is? What's your comfort level with risk? How much time do we have to meet your goals? And then what I do is I create a financial plan, and that's what I call a blueprint. And the blueprint is just a financial GPS that will guide clients through their life, their short-term goals, get you to retirement, and that you get you through retirement. It's just a visual interpretation of what do I need to do financially to make sure I'm meeting all my goals. And then based on that plan, that's when we create an asset allocation model. Asset allocation just means that we're investing according to your timeline, your risk preference, your experience with investing. I'm picking investments that will hopefully grow over time that will allow you to meet all of your goals. And what I'm doing is I'm actively monitoring all that. So I'm actively staying in touch with my clients to make sure that they're confident, make sure they're happy, they feel comfortable with everything going on, and we make changes as necessary. Anybody have questions so far? So we're pretty much to the end of the financial stuff. Now, what's really neat about college is this is the time to really decide who you want to be. And I spent a good amount of time trying to figure out who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. Michael Jordan, favorite basketball player of all time, amazing person, amazing basketball player, of course, but from a general standpoint, just an amazing human being off the court as well. I've carried this quote with me for a long time. It simply says, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost 300 games. 26 games I've been trusted to make the winning shot and miss. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. The only way you're going to succeed is by taking chances. So figure out who you want to be, what you want to do, and then take those chances. It's a great time to use that failure as an opportunity to create success. And that's how I got to where I am today, by failing over and over and over and over again and learning from those failures to help grow as the person I become today. Here are some really neat resources. SagePathFA.com is the website. We have what's called a resource center, all kinds of financial tools, topics, videos, calculators. I have a blog that I update every couple times a week. That's based on current events, so check that out. I also have a podcast. It's called Dad Sense. I'm a dad. I love being a dad. So I try to cover relevant topics every week or two. And then this is another great resource. I didn't get into paying back student debt because it's kind of a tricky subject, but this is actually a federally, this is actually a federally sponsored website to help you either obtain financing for college or help you consolidating loans that you might have in relation to college. And then this is me, this is my email address. If you have questions, concerns, if you have information you want to share, please email me. I would be happy to help you as much as I can. That's it for me. So thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate all of you.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Jason.
Thank you so much, Jason. Does anybody else have any questions before we wrap this up? I know it's 1 o'clock, but I figure I'll give everyone a shot if they have anything they'd like to ask. Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you so much, Jason, for sharing all of this with us. I know
It's
it can
my
be very-
pleasure.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Awesome.